And good evening and welcome to Train Aficionado Live. This is the first show of 2023. I'm Jonathan Higgins, your host. For the next hour, we're going to talk about railfan photography in Massachusetts. So some of the places that I actually visited while I was living out there for a long time. I'll just put it that way. I don't want to date myself tonight, but we've got a great show underway for you. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you've got questions, certainly place those in the comments. After the presentation, we will have a few minutes to be able to take a look at those questions and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much to everybody that's joining us this evening, from Rick, Chris, and Let's Go Railfanning. So, and Lincoln is out there as well. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And let's take a look at this evening's slide presentation. Oops, I guess something happened to my volume. Hold on one second. We'll roll this back. All right, so those of you that are joining us this evening, welcome to the show. We are currently being streamed in 4K, so sorry about that. Audio glitch there. I didn't have my audio turned on. But anyway, we'll go through the rest of the slide presentation right now. So my dad was the first person that railfanned with me when I was a little boy. We've railfanned pretty much in Middleborough, Massachusetts, and then as an adult, we traveled all over New England, New York's Hudson River, the Carolinas, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So a lot of great places we've traveled to. So here's some photos of my dad. These are actually from one of our trips out in Pennsylvania, in the Altoona area. Bay Colony was a railroad that we railfanned as when I was growing up. And it had several of the lines, such as down on the Cape, and then some lines that were in Taunton, Massachusetts. And we would see a Bay Colony locomotive parked on a spur track in Taunton, Massachusetts. Bay Colony basically operated most of the state-owned railroads in Massachusetts from 1982 to 2007. So here's my dad and I standing beside of a Bay Colony train. And currently, right now, it's doing a couple of short line tracks, but it doesn't have as large of a swath of railroad service that it did back in the day. Northeast Corridor. Basically, I railfan this a lot. Basically, the northern end of it from Boston to Providence and parts of Connecticut. Really haven't railfan the Northeast Corridor through New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Maryland or in D.C. Someday I'd like to railfan some of this track as well. The Northeast Corridor basically is running from Boston to Washington, D.C., spanning 457 miles with 108 stations, 30 Amtrak stations, 79 commuter rail only stations. The Northeast Corridor carries more than 2,200 trains daily, which is a staggering number of the amount of service that's going in there. And you can kind of see on the chart the mileposts. Starting in Boston, you're starting at milepost 229, and then basically it heads south all the way down to New York City, and it's at 0 there. And then basically it turns back on again from 0 all the way to Washington, D.C., which the remainder of the trip is 137 miles. So quite a swath of track there. Amtrak is very dominant on this line, of course. So if you're a big fan of Amtrak, railfan the Northeast Corridor. You'll see plenty of trains there. Boston South Station. Beautiful station. Built in the 1899, this station was the largest and the busiest station in the world, serving roughly 38 million passengers in 1913. The MBTA purchased the station in 1978 with plans to restore it. The station's final cost for that project was $195 million. The picture that we're looking at here was taken on March, I don't know why, I must have made a typo there, March 23rd of 1902. The high rail that's there, Atlantic Avenue, that's where the high rail is now gone. Basically, most of the subway operations is underground in Boston. So here's some photographs from Boston South Station. You can see, of course, a regional electric on the right, and then the Acela over on the left. Eventually, the Acela kits will be changed out to the brand new high-speed electrics. Amtrak Acela basically debuted in 2000, and basically once these trains came into play, it was very popular for travelers going from Boston to New York to Washington, D.C. This right-of-way, basically for the Northeast Corridor, follows Interstate 95. For anybody that's familiar with the interstate, it follows that interstate quite a bit, and it's taken some congestion off the highways as well. I mean, the great thing about riding the train, you're not dealing with vehicle traffic. Boston's North Station, which is on the north end of Boston, has had multiple stations, believe it or not. The original station was built in the late 1800s and was torn down in 1927. The second station was opened on November the 17th of 1928, and it was occupied in that building, the lower level, inside the Boston Madison Square Garden, which then later became Boston's Garden, which served as a sports venue. Later on, the facility basically got another facelift. Actually, they tore down the original Boston Garden and built what was then called the Fleet Center, and then later became the Boston Garden. Again, I believe it has some sort of sponsorship at this point, but I don't remember who's sponsoring it. So the current facility cost over $10 million to build. It includes a parking garage, the rail station, of course, the sports arena. And then they constructed in 2019 an actual passenger way. So basically the building actually has a facade in a section there where passengers can actually enter in versus going into the current Boston Garden. The photo that you see over on the left was taken in the late 1800s, and this is on Causeway Street. Unfortunately, the streetcars are no longer traveling on the street, but the great thing about it is it looked like a really beautiful facility, and I believe they've put additions on the original facility when it was built. And this was a beautiful facility in its day. The interesting thing about it is there's no connection, direct connection rail-wise from the South Station to North Station. During the Big Dig project, they were hoping to make a connection in between the two terminals. There is a way to be able to get trains from the north end to the south end, but it's not a direct route. So hopefully someday there'll be a direct connection in between the two stations. Here's some of the photographs that I've taken from Boston's North Station. There's one photo here you see. It's in the MBTA commuter rail maintenance facility, which is in the very top right. I was able to get a tour of the facility with a railroad club that I belong to in Massachusetts. So we were able to get a behind-the-scenes tour. It was pretty awesome. I was able to go inside of a lot of these locomotives and, of course, be able to photograph them in here. The other photos that we see here in the photo on the screen here is, of course, some photos I've taken on the platform at North Station, and then of course I was able to take some photos of trains departing North Station. And this is a bridge that you see here that goes up and down. It allows boat traffic to go into the Charles River. This station currently services 4 MBTA commuter rail lines: the Fitchburg line, the Haverhill line, the Lowell line, the Newburyport Rockport line, and of course Amtrak's ever so popular Downeaster, basically running from North Station all the way into Portland, Maine, and a little bit beyond there. They want to extend it out even further into Maine. That's something that's hopefully going to come about eventually. We're going to take a little trip down the Northeast Corridor to Attleboro, Massachusetts. This is where I lived for about 10 years. The station that you see that's in the larger image was the original station that was in Attleboro. Quite a beautiful station. It was actually torn down when they elevated the right-of-way through Attleboro. And it was replaced by the smaller image that you see there on the right. Not so elegant, the station, but definitely serves the purpose. There's actually a station on both sides of the tracks, which is really nice. Currently, the station that you see here in the image here is still used for passenger service for the MBTA. And then the one that's across the tracks, which I don't have a photo of in the presentation, is a doctor, some sort of offices, I believe. I can't remember who's in there, but there is a couple of different offices in there, so it's used for commercial use. But it's nice that the two stations stayed there, but the original station, of course, got torn down when they elevated the tracks. So basically, they eliminated several railroad crossings in order to, to make it safer through the city. And then, of course, they had to build new structures that were at the elevated level. And basically, the station, the original station, served as a point to transfer in between 7 routes. Here's another photograph from Attleboro, Massachusetts. It's milepost 169.9. This is one of the MBTA's trains heading towards Providence, Rhode Island. This is their newer locomotive set. And then what you see there for the commuter rail is their double-deckers. Actually, this is a set that has all double-deckers. Sometimes with the MBTA, you'll see a mix of double-deckers and some single-level cars. And, of course, it has a locomotive on one end and a control car on the other side. So basically, when they head back inbound to Boston, the engineer is operating the train from the control car. Something that I believe I've written a blog about this, about the Attleboro Switch Tower. This is a bit of history that needs to be saved. And currently you can see that it's not in the greatest shape. The switch tower is a rare example of a wooden railway tower, and the tower is over 100 years old. I believe inside of it there is still some of the switch levers and such that are in there. Of course, the building's been vandalized, and of course it's very weathered. I haven't heard any updates about restoring this building, but hopefully it's in the near future. Connecting to Attleboro was the Middleborough Secondary. This line basically runs from Attleboro. So this would branch off of the Northeast Corridor and then heading to Middleborough, Massachusetts. This is 21 miles of track. This part will serve as a part of the South Coast Rail Project, and some sections of the track date back to 1836. Not the current track that's there, but the right-of-way dates back to that track. I'm sure the track has been updated. These photos that you see here are from November the 12th of 2018, and the great thing about it is I was able to chase this local freight going into a industrial park in Taunton, Massachusetts, called Miles Standish Industrial Park. And I was able to chase this train, and this is something that I wasn't able to do all the time because usually it was Monday through Friday. I couldn't remember if I took a day off, and I heard this on the scanner, so I ended up chasing this train all the way over there, and I've got several photos of it, as you can see here. Mansfield, Massachusetts is also off of the Northeast Corridor, this map dating back to 1876. The railroad lines that are on the map, let me use my little marker here. You can see this right here is the same path of the Northeast Corridor, basically running, in this direction towards Boston, and of course running in this direction towards New York and all points south. This over here, this line that goes this way, would run towards the Middleborough Secondary and then run all the way to New Bedford, Massachusetts if you stayed on that line right here. And then we have this line here going towards the Foxborough Stadium, or Gillette Stadium. As many of you know, the New England Patriots play out of there. This line actually heads towards Framingham, and it's now known as the CSX Framingham Secondary. So this is out by milepost 204, and this is in Mansfield. Of course, this beautiful roundhouse that you see here is no longer there, and this station that serviced the two lines is no longer there. Unfortunately, a lot of the railroad history kind of went away. I mean, basically we have the two tracks that are still there, which is the Northeast Corridor, this right-of-way going north and south, and then, of course, this one heading in a westerly direction towards Framingham. Here's some photos from Mansfield. This serves as a station stop for the MBTA's Providence line. Amtrak trains do not stop here, but they go past at 100 miles an hour. So this is a spot where a lot of rail fans try to get some photographs of the Amtrak, Acela, and Regional on the move. In this location, of course, you can get some CSX as well, servicing the industrial parks in Mansfield, and of course the MBTA, as you can see here. The photo right here is a train heading inbound to Boston using the control car at the front. You can see the little the red lights are on in the back, so that indicates that this is the rear of the train. You can see a closer shot here where those red lights are on. So basically it's heading inbound to Boston with the control car on the end there. Same thing here. We've got the Amtrak Acela heading inbound to Boston. You can see the canaries right there, and both lines are electric. So basically, Amtrak can travel on either one of those lines. And right over here, if you look at the shot where I'm running my cursor, is where the Framingham secondary, CSX's Framingham secondary, turns off, which is right there. We can't talk about Massachusetts without talking about the Cape Cod Railroad. The Cape Cod Railroad, the main line originated originally would head from Middleborough all the way out to Provincetown, which is way out of the tip of the Cape. So unfortunately, a lot of the tracks have been removed, basically just east of Yarmouth, which is right here. And all this track has been removed all the way down to the Chatham branch and, of course, to Provincetown. Many of the parts of the right-of-way has been salvaged and is a bike trail. The Hyannis line basically is still there. It's not all the way out to the pier, but it stops right at the station there. And then looking at the Falmouth Woods Hole branch, which is right here, this branch is all the way into North Falmouth, I believe. And then the rest of the line is now switched to a rails to trails. And we'll go over some of the usage of some of this line in some upcoming slides. So the original Cape Cod Bridge basically was this bridge right here. So it was a drawbridge, so basically boats could travel through here. So it was in the up position all the time unless there was a train coming through. So this bridge was built in 1910 and was demolished in need for a wider right-of-way. So it required a new bridge. And later was replaced by what we know today as the Cape Cod Lift Bridge, or otherwise known as the Cape Cod Railroad Bridge. Taking a look at the photograph here, you can see that the lift bridge was being assembled right beside of the original bridge here. You can see that this track splits right here and then splits here. So basically this track here is traveling to Falmouth, and then this track would be heading to points east on Cape Cod. And then we see these tracks here, which would travel to Wareham and then out to Middleborough. So, a little bit of stuff here. There used to be a yard here at one point. That yard's gone, and it's basically a park. And then, of course, along the Cape Cod Canal on both sides, there's a bike trail along both sides. And if you ride on the Cape side of it, you're running right parallel. Once this turns, it'll come back towards the canal further down on the Cape, and then you'll be able to basically ride your bike parallel to the railroad tracks, so you can kind of get some photos and such if you see a train coming through. Here's the Cape Cod Railroad Bridge, built in 1933. The bridge saw its first crossing in 1935. Took them a while to build the bridge. There's weights on each side weighing over 2,000 tons. Ooh, pretty heavy. And they're basically two concrete blocks covered with steel, which are weights. You can see that the bridge is in its up position. So you can see, if you look close at the photograph here, you can see the weights right here and here. So when the bridge goes down, I should say, these weights will go up and the bridge will come down. It takes about 2.5 minutes for the bridge to go down. And basically the bridge is in its up position until a train needs to pass through. And typically you'll see this for the energy train, which basically brings trash. The energy train is the nice way of putting it. Brings trash off the Cape and then goes to a facility where it's basically burned, and it's in Rochester, Massachusetts. It used to be called CMAS. I believe they've called it something else at this point. And then also the Cape Cod Railroad, which is a scenic railroad, will occasionally go over this bridge. And then during the summer months, which we're going to talk about, the Cape Flyer. Here's a train going over the Cape Cod Railroad Bridge. You can see that the bridge is in the down position. and this is the Mass Coastal Scenic train going over the bridge, as you can see here. It's pretty neat watching the bridge go up and down. Basically, what ends up happening is the railroad has communication with the canal, and basically they communicate on the radio. So basically, they use the road channel. There's a question about what frequency is used for. They use the road channel. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head for the Cape Cod Railroad. And then they'll communicate to the bridge operator on a different frequency and then lower the bridge. And then also, a tone will go out. And then they also have lights, indicating for the boat traffic they have to stop and wait for the bridge to go down. And then they, of course, have to wait for the bridge to go back up. So it's really neat. As for the frequencies, I'm not sure off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've been in Massachusetts, but I know the train calls for the bridge through the dispatch. So I had the opportunity on May the 18th of 2013 to be able to ride the first Cape Codder train. Now, this was basically a test run, and it made its way on a Saturday from Boston South Station to Hyannis and dead-headed back. So it had a whole bunch of political figures on there. The manager, which you see on the microphone there, of the MBTA was on board. We left Boston. And then we headed south to Hyannis, and then we departed about an hour or two later. I was able to ride the Cape Flyer. If you want to learn more about the Cape Flyer, I do have a blog entry. And this kind of prompted, the blog initially. I was following several different things, and I ended up starting a few months before this, the Train Aficionado blog. So it's been 10 years this year that I've been doing the blog, and it was a really great trip on the Cape Flyer. And then I've ridden on it 2 more times since, once with my good friend Will, and then another time with my dad. So certainly, it's an awesome ride. The ride basically is from Memorial Day to Labor Day during the summer, and it's weekend service. And then it makes round trips each day. The Cape Flyer basically provides service from Boston to Hyannis, and then connects to ferry service to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. Basically, where the station is in Hyannis, it's a quick walk across, and you can catch one of the ferries out of Hyannis and be able to go to 2 of the islands. Of course, there's bus service there as well. So if you want to navigate to some other places on the Cape, you certainly can do that as well. And this beautiful picture, which I was able to capture, is a train heading back into Boston. Yet again, we see those red lights on the rear of locomotive number 10 heading back into Boston. I was able to get this shot, and of course it was at sunset. Beautiful evening down at Buzzards Bay and Bourne over the canal there. Beautiful shot. Here's some more photographs of the trains here. Another shot of locomotive number 10. Also the rear end and the front end of the energy train. So you can see here, this is what it looks like when the bridge is down. It's a single line track. I was able to get a really good shot. This is heading back into the mainland, I guess we can call it. This train was destined for Wareham. This is the front of the train. This actually was the trash train coming out of this line right here is the Falmouth line, and basically this line here is the main line for the Cape. And this is an energy train coming out of Otis Air Force Base, which is no longer an Air Force base, but they do some processing of trash on the facility. And then, of course, this train heads right over the bridge, as you can see right here, and then right to Wareham. The Buzzards Bay Interlocking Tower, built by the New Haven Railroad in the early part of the 20th century, is still an operational tower. They still use it. Mass Coastal still uses this tower up on the top here, and occasionally you'll see somebody up there, and they'll actually communicate with them over the radio to the tower. Right next to this is the station for Buzzards Bay. And eventually, they want to bring commuter rail service on a daily basis down to the Cape. So trains may make its way all the way to the bridge, but not go over the bridge to Cape Cod. But there's still a working tower, and you can check that out in Buzzards Bay. We've taken our way to Palmer, Massachusetts, is deemed of the town with 7 railroads, and it's rich with railroad history. Here is a photograph of inside the historic Palmer Union Terminal, a Union Station, and now is known as the Steaming Tender Restaurant, which I frequently dined at when I was in Massachusetts. And when I do make a trip out to Mass, hope to stop there and have some dinner. Palmer is certainly a rail fanning town as well. The Steaming Tender Restaurant is a well-known rail fanning spot in western Massachusetts. As you can see here, we can see some train activity on at the Diamond there, which is on the back end of the Steaming Tender Restaurant. And that's one of the New England Central Railroad locomotives there. I believe they bought that from somebody else. That's not their actual colors, but they're using that locomotive. And you can see that the trains still pass the station up in the top, on the top right. They also pass on the other side of the station. That's where CSX's main line is. You can see that this photograph was taken a bit ago, and of course, some grass growing in the yard in between the tracks. Here's some more photos from Palmer. There's actually 3 rail service, freight service out of Palmer. You can see CSX, which is not photographed here, but we do have the New England Central Railroad. And of course, one of my favorites is the Mass Central Railroad, which is the blue, black, and white, which are the Boston and Maine colors. And then, of course, we have Amtrak that travels through with the Lakeshore Limited, basically from Boston to Chicago. So certainly some rail action here. It's not as busy as, of course, the Horseshoe Curve, but there certainly is some rail traffic here to be seen. And typically during the week is a good time to go there during the day. You'll see some operation by New England Central Railroad, and of course Mass Central, and of course the Amtrak going through, and some CSX activity. So we take you to Ayer, Massachusetts, which is also a freight hub in New England, and is also home of the Ayer Norfolk Southern Intermodal Facility. Let's take a look at the lay of the land here. This is an older map. So the tracks heading this way and this way are heading east and west, and then of course tracks heading up and down or north and south. So the tracks that are heading to the north are now abandoned. They're not here anymore. Basically, it's a bike trail. And then the tracks heading in the southern direction go to the Norfolk Southern Intermodal Facility. And then this track here, many of you probably heard of the Pan Am service, in Ayer and up in Maine and New Hampshire. This is their line here, heading east-west on the map. And so a lot of this track is not here anymore. Used to be Double Diamond, which is not there anymore. We'll take a look at a few photographs of some of the area here. There is an interlocking tower. It's no longer used, I believe, but this was used back in the day for this complex junction, to be able to control everything that was going on here. Let's take a look at the next photo. We can see a Pan Am unit right here, which is now operated by CSX. So they sold their equipment to Pan Am, and now they basically inherited some of it back. And then, of course, we do have some Norfolk Southern that uses this track as well to service the intermodal yard, as you can see here. A train coming off of here, and then eventually this train will eventually head west, towards New York and so forth. And then, of course, the town has a MBTA station as well, which you can see an MBTA locomotive traveling here as well. This is also a pretty well-known rail fanning spot as well. Lots of activity probably during the week, during the daytime, but it's not as heavily activity as something like the Horseshoe Curve. And of course, this is Pan Am's and CSX's freight mainline, milepost 314. All right, that wraps up our photos from Massachusetts. Of course, I had the ability to, of course, post even more photos, but those are some of the highlights of it. So sorry about the audio trouble at the beginning of this broadcast. I appreciate you guys hanging in there, and thank you for letting me know. I didn't realize that I wasn't churning out any audio. Does anybody have any questions this evening regarding the presentation? I'll be happy to answer those now. Just want to show you what's coming up on the next Train Aficionado show. So let's take a look at that right now. Trackside Tools, a guide to railfan photography, the must-have. So you'll see what's inside of my camera bag. That'll be Wednesday, January the 18th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you tune in for that. We'll even talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you should have with you in your scanner as well. So the Train Aficionado YouTube channel, make sure you check it out. We have, of course, our shows the first and third Wednesday of every month. And then, of course, we have, videos about rail fanning, scanner tips, interviews, and, of course, railroad photography, as you've seen tonight. And we're live on YouTube right now, and as always, with our live presentations. So make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. What a great presentation tonight. If you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those. I did see, the frequency question here. I know it is listed on Radio Reference. I probably could pull it up. Let me just see here. Hold on one second. Oh, yeah. It's on my screen right now. So it's 160.245, and that's basically the railroad operations for them, I believe. And that's, what'll end up happening is there's lots of activity on that channel when the Cape Flyer travels down to Cape Cod. So that's a great time to be able to, one, see some activity down there, and two, that bridge is going to open for the Cape Flyer. And the Buzzards Bay Station, or Bourne, is a scheduled stop. So it's going to stop there, and then the bridge. Of course, the bridge is already called when it approaches that station. So basically, once they do the station stop, they can just head right over the bridge. They literally, the Cape Flyer, they got it timed out quite well. So definitely during the summer months in between Memorial Day and Labor Day, if you're in the Cape Cod area and you want to see the bridge go up or down, definitely check that out as well. Some other questions. I've had Danny Harmon on for a couple of shows. I'll have to reach out to him again to get him on. Would love to be able to just sit and talk to him. Somebody asked about Jawtooth. No, I haven't met him, so I'm sure he's out and about. Let me just see. Lots of check-ins this evening. I thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Instagram. The other thing that we can recommend too is hit the subscribe button and sign up for our newsletter. We have a newsletter on trainaficionado.com, and we also have a store. So if you want to support the shows, we would greatly appreciate that as well. We plan on doing a lot of traveling during these spring and summer months. to shoot some episodes and shows for the fall. So definitely anything that, if you support the show, that of course, by purchasing swag and so on, will help our budget for traveling and so forth. I thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you again 2 weeks. Actually, we'll catch you again on the 18th. Next week, of course, will be the Scanner Guys, which will be January the 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We hope you join us there as well. Have a great evening and be safe out there.